Okay, it's now after 7. I had already called this meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. We were in an executive session, which we've now exited, and we are in regular session. So we will start our meeting, as we do most meetings, with citizens' concerns. So if you have a question or comment on an issue not otherwise on the agenda, come up.
Okay, David Hahn, 105 School Street. I'm going to address some concerns of the South Acton Neighborhood Association with regard to 4 Piper Lane. You've heard some of this before, but we want to reiterate some points, and we'll follow this up with, I'll be brief, because I know you don't have a lot of time, but we'll follow this up with a written summary. I'm going to make about 8 points. Land control. The burden of easement and land control as it relates to Piper Lane and its abutters is fast becoming clearer and stronger. We have sought additional legal advice concerning the parcels of land the developer will propose using, and believe that one of them will not prevail as legitimately available to the developer owing to SJC rulings and legal opinions from our title experts. Specifically, we believe the town will want to consider conducting an ALTA survey to establish what lands are in fact available for development using Piper Lane as an access road. We can discuss this further at a future date. Thank you. Number 2, Santa sent a letter of 12/14/18 to the BOS, which we are still awaiting a reply from the BOS. My colleagues are passing out a copy of the letter to you so that it can all serve as a reminder. I won't bother to go over what's in the letter, but 3, we have been in touch with state representatives, including Senator Eldridge and Benson, both of whom are keenly interested and concerned about this project and what the town will be doing. We'll be doing more follow-up, including communications with Mass Housing on this matter. Thank you. We met with Senator Eldridge. He came out, he toured the site with us. He's against the project. He's been in discussions with Crystal Cornegay, the head of Mass Housing, and we're awaiting some summary comments from him about what their discussion entailed. We specifically pointed out the veracity problems with the application and asked him to point those out to the Director of Mass Housing. Number 4, Selectmen Benson informed one of our members, naming me, that he had informally run into Mr. Watson from Mass Housing and asked him about the status of the Piper Lane project. Mr. Watson apparently indicated that the applicant was continuing to submit more papers to his application. Mr. Watson assured Mr. Benson that the Board of Selectmen and Santa would be given every opportunity to see these additional documents. We believe it is in the best interest of the town to put that understanding in writing from the BOS to the Mass Housing and ask on the record that this be accomplished. Thank you. Number 5, we have made suggestions that the town's attorney and our Santa attorney, Mr. Dan Hill, communicate on how best to share their concerns regarding the inaccurate and false claims made by the applicant in his application to Mass Housing. We'd like the record to show that this request remains and needs to be addressed. It seems unconscionable that the BOS was asked to review a document from Mass Housing that was replete with omissions and of questionable standing, and want to make sure that the town is respected in this process and ask for accountability from Mass Housing as well. 6, we understand the Avalon project, Phase 2, is moving forward toward approval and will put the town into safe harbor situation as it relates to 40B projects. I'll just add that we recently saw that it's on the agenda for the ZBA for February 21st. That has significant bearing on the Piper Lane project. We would respectfully remind the BOS and others that the ZBA may not consider anything from Piper Lane project until after June 2019, I believe about the middle of June 2019, since one portion of the parcels, the 90 School Street part, was ruled ineligible to appear before the ZBA from a year from its last no-show hearing, which is in the middle of June 2018. We remain hopeful that the town would be in safe harbor or approaching it soon before the matter of Piper Lane comes before the ZBA assuming it is given a project eligibility letter from Mass Housing. Specifically, we would like to have in writing, please, an indication of how the Avalon project would impact Piper Lane and how long the Avalon project might take to get final approval phase, status, I should say. Perhaps Nancy Tavier might be asked, could enlighten everyone on this matter about what the procedure is for obtaining safe harbor. 7, we know the town is aware of a sundry and regrettable story with the lot at 90 School Street, including back taxes not paid and negligence in terms of declaring it a condemned property, but then allowing it to sit and go to seed, literally, which occurred over a 9-year period. Then to have it go up in smoke. We believe that the town will therefore want to be more proactive this time as far as that property is concerned. The rest of the taxpayers in the town are not given the pass. It is at least unseemly, and the worst, perhaps a reason why the Piper Lane project must not be allowed to be reviewed in town for at least the next 6 months. I just want to reiterate what we said in our letter of December 14th, and that is that Mr. Shaw has now stiffed the town for an additional 4 years of no taxes and no sewer betterment fees. So that's 13 years of basically the town doing nothing about that property, which, you know, is putting us into this very awkward situation with Piper Lane and this 40B. Last, we want to advise the BOS that Santa is taking the long view on this Piper Lane project. We hope for an early resolution that denies the project and saves Great Hill and all the South Acton neighborhood from this intrusive and unsafe project. If we must fight the battle longer, however, we are prepared to ask for a special town meeting at which we'll ask for appropriation of at least $250,000 to underwrite the legal expenses. And we believe the town may need to have to fight the project to the end, in other words, in court, if necessary. We know the procedure for establishing this special town meeting, and we just want to put this Board of Selectmen, we just want you to know that we'll go down that road if we have to. We hope we don't have to, and that's why we urge you to act aggressively on helping us deny this PEL. Thank you.
Great, thank you, David. So typically we don't respond to citizens' concerns during the meeting because they're not on our agenda. I will say, though, that the town manager's update was going to involve a quick update on the council's discussions related to Piper Lane, so it might be appropriate for him to do that now if you want to, John.
Okay, I can do that. So a few meetings ago, the group suggested that we have our council reach out to Mass Housing Council. And that was about the end of the calendar year, and our council did reach out to Mass Housing Council and wasn't getting much response, and then realized that actually Mass Housing changed council right at the end of the year. So that caused a little bit of delay in a response, but we did follow up with other representatives in the program as they're transitioning to new legal counsel, and received an update similar to what you reported earlier, that they're still accepting application materials that they were waiting on, and that we would have a further opportunity to review once that's completed.
Thank you, and we'll take everything else you said under consideration, and I'll let you know if there are any other updates. Okay, other citizens' concerns.
Tara Fredericks, West Acton, and Annette Lockery, who couldn't be here today, who's proceeding to organize an effort to buy the little parcel on Pearl Street in Central, 257 Pearl Street. She sends her gratitude to the people who've been helping her this last week understand how to submit a petition and review. She went to the town manager's office, and she's been going to various meetings and looks forward to working with everybody on that, and would prefer that the town come forward and place an article instead of a citizen's petition. But either way, she's been happy with the process so far. And I know some other people have been doing petitions, have been helping, although I haven't helped you guys yet, but happy to. And there's a Kmart petition about Kmart going into, I think that went in today. And so that process, from what I understand, the people involved in the process have given the town government a stellar review in how inviting and inclusive and understandable the process has been. I personally am worried about tasers and the sewer money and the Kelly's Corner money in the budget, and I hope that those are separate votes so that we can decide in a democratic fashion whether we want those individual items as opposed to grouping them all together as a one take it or leave it vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' concerns? Okay, seeing none. The chairman's update. So this Wednesday, we'll be holding a pedestrian safety and sidewalks public forum on Wednesday the 30th at 7 p.m. in room 204. Peter and I will be representing the Board of Selectmen. The town manager will be there. Our director of engineering and chief of police will be, Public Works will be there, and a representative from the Sidewalk Committee. So we'll be discussing a variety of issues, and if you are all interested in pedestrian safety and sidewalks, we strongly encourage you to attend. The Recreation Department is hosting their annual Winter Carnival this Saturday from 4 to 7 p.m. at Nara, and I know they have activities planned whether there is snow or not, and I've heard it's a very fun time, so especially for the kids, so if you have them, I hope you can attend. And the last day to obtain papers to run for local office in Acton is this Friday, February 1st. See the town clerk's office if you would like to, if you are interested in running, and to pull papers for that. And the deadline to register to vote for the local elections is March 6th, and the elections themselves are on March 26th, with town meetings starting on April 1st. So right now, we're in sort of countdown mode to town meeting, and a lot of the agendas for our next meetings will be focused on that and related issues, so stay tuned for those, including at our next meeting, which will be this next Monday. We don't have a break this time in between. On February 4th, we will have a presentation from the Main Street Master Planning Committee on their recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on that property that we've been working on for a number of years now. Mr. Manager.
Thank you for mentioning the Sidewalk Forum. It should be a great event. Hopefully you can come. We also have another public forum I wanted to make sure you're all aware of. On March 5th, we'll hold the Kelly's Corner 25% design public hearing. That's part of the process for a infrastructure project that's funded by the state. They hold a 25% hearing to make sure everyone has the opportunity to see the plan and to make comments. So I hope you can be there. It'll be right in this room, March 5th. Just wanted to mention to the board that our first presentation to the Community Preservation Committee was last week with regards to the Asa Parlin House project. And I got a lot of great feedback from the committee and some requests for further information. So I'll be working on that over the next few weeks to get it back to them for their next round of meetings. If you have any comments or thoughts on that, please let me know. But it should be an interesting process. I'll come up with another one. Hold on.
Sorry, I have the wrong public hearing notice, so I'm just trying to figure out, do you have it somewhere that you can print? That is the correct one? Okay, even though it's 7:15 on it? Okay, but the other stuff is right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Yes. Yes.
473. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. Okay, thank you. All right, you're set. Sorry about that. Okay, up next we have our public hearing. So the Acton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on January 28th, 2019 at 7:10 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at Town Hall 472 Main Street, Acton, on the application of Costas Sarantius, 77 Great Road, Acton, for use special permit 12-1818-473, required under sections 3.5.8 and 10.3 of the Acton zoning bylaw. The application accompanying plans can be inspected at the Planning Division Town Hall during normal business hours. Is somebody here for that? Yes. Do you mind just coming up and speaking briefly about your application, sir?
Yes, hi. My name is Kostas Sarantias, and I'm the owner of Atlantic Sea Grill. The reason for this special permit was because recently, as you're probably aware of, Atlantic Sea Grill is located on the first floor on 77 Great Road. And adjacent to that was a space occupied by Shaggy Dog Grooming Services. And the landlord made me aware about 6 months ago that space was available. And because of the growing needs for the restaurant, we considered for possible expansion to the new space. Again, it's all internal modifications. I talked to the planning board, and they guided me through the process. I believe I've completed all the paperwork requested, and I'm here to answer any questions on this application.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Peter?
Yeah, I was the member assigned to review this, and there are no objections in the record. The planning department recommends that the board issue a special permit with conditions. It's simply moving into adjacent space and expanding the size of the restaurant. There are no exterior renovations or additions to the building that I'm aware of, so I would recommend that the board approve this special permit with the conditions in the planning department's draft permit.
Okay. Any other questions? The only one I had was the note in the condition from planning and the suggested condition in there, part of which was around capping the number of seats that you're allowed to have, and I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but that you were planning during some parts of the year to have additional seats outside, but during that time you would close some of the seats inside, and it sounds like you do that already. How do you do that to ensure that your host or whomever isn't accidentally seating people at seats inside? Are you physically moving those tables outside?
Yes, basically during the summer season we have an outside patio, and we allocate a certain number of seats, but the total number of seats always at or below the limit of the permit. Originally it was 106.
Yeah.
With a new special permit, that will top to 134.
134, right, okay. Yeah, and so you physically move those tables outside.
Yes,
so there's just,
it's a seasonal adjustment because,
right.
Again, but the plan is to never exceed that number of seats.
That number, okay, yeah, no, I just, figured if you weren't actually moving them, I didn't know how you handled making sure somebody didn't make a mistake, but that makes sense. Okay, any questions or comments from members of the public? Seeing none, do we have a motion? Jones made a motion to approve. Janet second. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much and good luck with your expansion.
Thank you.
Okay. Right on time for the 7:20. Thank you. Okay, the Acton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on January 28th, 2019. These times are wrong, 7:20 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, on the application of Westside Creamery, LLC at 537 Massachusetts Avenue, number 100, Acton, Mass, under Section 140 of the Massachusetts General Laws for a common victualler license. The application can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. And is there somebody here from Westside Creamery? Yes, great. Yeah, do you mind just coming up and introducing your request?
Sure. Good evening. My name's Dave Greenhalgh. I'm an Acton resident, and I have my partner, Andy, here.
Andy Rickard, West Acton, Acton resident as well.
Great. And do you want to just say briefly what you're proposing to do or adding in?
Sure. We are going to be hope to be opening a ice cream store with homemade ice cream at 537 Mass Ave, the old Acton Montessori School. We're going to be making our own ice cream. It's going to be a very limited menu, basically just ice cream and ice cream related products and maybe a few small offerings of baked goods.
Great. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing none, I just have to say I heard you guys when you came to the Board of Health quite a while back, I think, to get the permits from them, and was very excited to hear about an ice cream store going into West Acton. I think a lot of people will be, it's such a walkable area, and then having the bookstore there and the ice cream shop and the coffee shop and everything, it'll be a really great addition. Maybe the people who do yoga will be a little sad. Maybe they'll be happy. They did their yoga. They feel like they can get an ice cream after.
They've already put in their request for what flavors.
Oh, yeah, right, what they want, okay. I'm not surprised, I guess. Okay, seeing no questions from members of the board, any questions or comments from members of the audience? All right, seeing none, can I have a motion, please?
Second.
All right, Joan has moved to approve, Janet seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, welcome to town. And when are you hoping to open?
Sometime in March,
All
early
right.
to mid-March.
Excellent. Well, we will keep an eye out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to take one item out of order. This is item number 7, the 2019 Acton Cleanup Week. There are a few high school students here, and I'm sure they would like to get home and get to sleep on the earlier end.
I'm actually not a high school student. Jim Snyder Grant from West Acton. Acton has had an annual cleanup event for 20 years. And as the co-president of Green Acton, I'm happy to announce that this year we are again working with the Asian American Civic Engagement Alliance, AACEA, to run Cleanup Week from April 25th to May 5th. So we're here to describe what the activity will be about this year and to ask for your support in declaring this a town event, a town-sponsored event, so that we can have access to town staff support as we have in the past. And now I'd like to introduce Alex and Annie and Brian, juniors at ABRHS, and youth members of the Asian American Civic Engagement Alliance, who can tell you the rest of the story.
Good evening, Board of Selectmen. My name is Alex.
Hi, my name is Annie.
And I'm Brian. Again, we are all juniors at the Acton-Boxborough Regional High School, and this year we will be the youth co-leaders helping Green Acton run this town-wide event. Many members of the AACEA have been involved with Acton Cleanup Day for the past few years. All of us value the tradition and think it is a great way to help get residents involved in making Acton a better and cleaner place for all. For the past 2 years, we have had great success by extending the event from 1 day to 1 week. Our participation rate doubled, and we have had many businesses, community groups, and high schoolers actively involved in the event.
So this year we plan to continue the weekly event, and we want to extend it 1 more day to include an additional Saturday. And as usual, we'll be seeking help from various groups in town to clean up during the entire week of April 25th to May 5th.
Because of the success and simplicity of running the decentralized and self-paced week-long event via the new actontrash.info website, we are dropping the complexities of having staff tables and centralized trash pickup. Volunteers will be able to sign up for streets to pick up at the website and drop off any trash they collect at any recreational area that has a trash bin.
And we'll be publicizing the event at the school and through civic groups through email and other means. And we look forward to having support from the Board of Selectmen and all the help we've had in years past from the town staff. Thank you.
Great. All right, thank you very much for that. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Janet.
No, I've been participating pretty much every year. I participated last year, and I'm hoping that the trash cans will. I went any recreational area. I think I ended up at the soccer fields or something, and I looked at the trash can, and I thought, oh God, it doesn't look as if anybody's left anything there. So I think, and I went to the playground by the library, and I thought, yeah. So then I went back to the soccer field. I thought, it's not used. There aren't people running around. I'll leave the trash back there. But yeah, every year I walk up and down Pope Road, and there's a big stash of little nip bottles and assorted and sundry liquors that I'd never heard of, but I assume are very popular among underage drinkers. So I'm glad that the younger generation is getting involved in this, and I always feel as if I'm helping to keep my little neck of the woods a little cleaner, but every year there's more stuff. So it would be good if we could get more people to just do it, you know, weekly, daily around their yards, but people don't. They're right along this curb. It's very interesting. There's all this stuff that you see, and people seem to not notice it when they drive into their driveways. But thank you very much for all you're doing.
Any other questions or comments? Well Yes, I'll just echo to say thank you very much. It's been really great since you guys have combined forces and extending it to the week. It's really wonderful to see young people getting involved, and especially for coming out tonight. So thank you very much for all you're doing. Any questions or comments from members of the audience? Okay, can I have a motion? I think we're looking for a motion for the Board of Selectmen to support the cleanup week.
Motion to express the Board of Selectmen's authorization and support for cleanup week.
Okay, Janet's made a motion, Joan seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. We look forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, now we will go back to our regularly scheduled agenda. So item number 3, the board to close the annual town meeting warrant. Mr. Manager.
Thank you. This is just an item to have the board formally vote to close the warrant. Mark Hall, Assistant Town Manager, can give a brief update of where we are today with the warrant.
Sounds great.
Thank you. So as of today, we have 51 articles on the warrant for the annual town meeting that begins April 1st. As we've done in the last several years, we've devoted the first night to articles that have a significant financial interest. So all the budgetary articles, all the assessments, the CPA, and then all the enterprise and revolving funds will take place on Monday night. Everything else is listed after that. So first we have 22 articles that are of a significant financial nature. On the second and subsequent nights, we'll have, we so far have 9 citizens petitions. I can list those are, with your permission. Yeah. One is, there are 6 that are non-binding, a building moratorium, a development rate limitation bylaw, land clearing limits, limit the size of new single-family houses, to not add turning lanes at Route 111 and Route 27, and to register intent to purchase the Kmart parcels. The ones that are not listed as non-binding are to amend the general bylaws for a plastic bag reduction and to acquire land at 257 Central Street, and to amend the zoning bylaw for detached accessory apartments. Tuesday or beyond would also have 2 articles related to the right to farm and the creation of an agricultural commission. And we also have 1 town charter change proposed, and that's to reduce the planning board's membership from 7 to 5.
Okay. Are there any questions initially from members of the board? And I'll say sort of like I said, during the next few meetings leading up to town meeting, there's going to be a lot of town meeting heavy content. So on the 4th, we'll have the Main Street Master Planning Committee presentation, and we are inviting, we'll be inviting proponents of the citizens petitions to make brief remarks on their proposals. And then in following weeks, we are hoping to have the school committee present on both their budget and a stabilization fund request to create a stabilization fund that they'll be bringing to town meeting. Hopefully the 53 River Street will do our prioritization of CPA articles, and then we'll have presentations on the town capital articles and other things. And then on March 4th, we will take votes on our recommendations and assignments, and leading up to that meeting, I'll just do draft, I'll kind of do a draft proposal for how to divvy up the articles and who to assign where, and then we can talk about that at the meeting, and we'll vote our recommendations then, and then the warrant will go to print shortly after that. So hopefully we will have most of our recommendations done, and then town meeting is nice and early in April on April 1st. So April Fool's Day, yeah. So any questions on anything that you heard? Okay, questions or comments from members of the audience? And then otherwise, we will take a vote. And as a note, again, the really closing it just means it's close to citizens petition under the procedure for getting citizens petition articles on, and the Board of Selectmen can add or remove articles. So.
I'll move we vote to close the warrant.
Okay, Peter made a motion, Joan seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. And if there's something you didn't hear me mention that you want to hear a presentation on, I might not have mentioned it, but just let me know and I'll make sure we have it scheduled, just so we're not shoving things in the last meeting. Okay, item number 4, discussion and amendment of Avalon 2 Memorandum of Agreement. Mr. Manager, do you want to kick that off and then?
Yes, a representative from Avalon is here to give a presentation, and the draft memorandum of agreement was in your packet before the weekend, and we'll be asking you to consider it tonight. And Michaela?
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to use this?
Well, I was going to say, I have a presentation. It's the same images that you saw last time when we were here September 17th. Happy to put it up and walk you all through the project again if that's helpful, or
I think let's do it just as a refresher, and then for folks in the audience who might not have been here or who are watching at home.
Sure. And my name's Michaela DeSantis. I'm with Avalon Bay. Paul Momney here with me from Goulston & Stores. So wait for that to jump off. But yeah, the primary purpose, we're here tonight, we're just seeking the Selectmen's approval to enter into the 6th amendment to the Memorandum of Agreement that was part of the original comprehensive permit for Avalon Acton back in 2005. And one of the conditions written in there, as I'm sure you saw, is for your support to write a letter to the ZBA. Thank you very much. Sort of endorsing the project in our application, our comprehensive permit application to the ZBA for this proposed phase 2, and then also further seeking your support down the line as this project for a proposed local initiative program, so a friendly 40B, so for that application, DHCD. And a little history before I get into everything and the technical stuff, but the original comprehensive permit was issued by the ZBA back in December of 2005. It included 2 distinct phases, 296 apartment homes in Acton, another 84 in Westford, that was done separately, and 64 for-sale townhomes. And the comprehensive permit was granted in conjunction with that original memorandum of agreement between the town of Acton Selectmen and the original developer, and that set forth all the original mitigation fees and obligations. At the time that the 64 for-sale townhomes, or the condo parcel, was anticipated to be built out at the same time as the apartments, and it was going to share amenities with the rental community. However, market conditions around 2007 hindered the development. It was subsequently re-permitted and granted a special permit under the Acton Senior Overlay Zoning to allow for age-restricted for-sale townhomes. However, that permit expired in August 2016. So we're here now to propose 86 apartment homes under the local initiative program. So that would be 25% of the units, or 22 apartment homes affordable at 80% of AMI, which would enable all 86 units to be counted towards the town's subsidized housing inventory. So I can walk you quickly through the proposal and what we looked at back in September. The program is essentially the same. Since we met with you in September, we actually had a meeting with the Acton Design Review Board in early November. They gave us some great feedback and comments on architecture and layouts, and we sort of worked those into the package that we did submit to the ZBA as part of the comprehensive permit. And so sort of the agenda, we've already gone through this a bit, but this is the overall program. Larger units, every unit will have its own front door. The majority of the units have their own private garage, so really easy transition perhaps for an older demographic that's downsizing, moving out of a single family home, but wants some similar type product. So this is the site as it lays out today. As you can see, you're coming down Nagog Park, and then you turn left onto the Avalon Drive, and you've got the mid-rise. I don't know if this is a laser. There we go. Mid-rise building right here. The leasing office is contained in that larger building, and then just a lot of three-story product around here. This is the new Insulet building, and then the parcel that we're looking at is right in this section here. And that's just what it would look like with the 86 units placed there. We're not anticipating building any new leasing or real indoor amenity space. Everything will still function out of this building where it is currently. The only extra amenity space will be an outdoor area. The covered porch, some grills, some seating, create sort of a passive and active recreation area. So I can get in, this is sort of, imagine the drawing flipped over. You're coming down Avalon Drive, it terminates here. This is just a landscaped plan of the layout. Central Boulevard right down the middle, which we've sort of changed now to this meandering path per comments from the Design Review Board. Perimeter sidewalk all around here, just so that way every unit has direct pedestrian access to this shared amenity space right here, which will have grills, sort of three-season porch here with a TV, and can be enjoyed. Trying to extend the shoulder seasons here in New England. Sort of a lawn or activity area here, and a fire pit right here. This is it rendered. Again, this is sort of an older one, doesn't incorporate the latest design changes we have, but just so you can see how it fits in into the current landscape. And I can just sort of walk you through the site. These are some 3D images. So this is that sort of covered porch area we were talking about. Some of the townhome buildings right here. As you can see on the ends, we've dropped the units from 3 stories to 2 stories, just so that we don't, fits in more, and you don't really feel any pinch points, and just a little less tall. It makes it nice and demure. Just working our way around the site. This is the other side of that covered porch area. Some great grade actually sloping down to the site, so trying to take advantage of that. This is as you're sort of looking up that boulevard. If you're at sort of the back left corner of the page of that landscape plan I showed you. Just working your way around. Some more nice images. So that's really it for the plan. It's the same plan that we'd proposed back in September, we've just refined the drawings and the design. So as I mentioned, we were here in September, and since then we've been working on the design. We've also been working on our comprehensive permit. So we officially filed that on January 18th with the ZBA. And this sort of comprehensive permit, it's really, we're filing an amendment to the existing comprehensive permit for these new 86 units, but we put together the entire full package that you would for a normal comprehensive permit. And this would utilize the local initiative program under Chapter 40B. And, the thing that benefits us here is we don't have to encumber this individual asset with any debt. DHCD is the subsidizing agency, and the subsidy they're providing is their technical expertise as opposed to, a monetary loan. We're in front of the ZBA on February 21st, later next month, and we also plan to file, at least get going on our LIP application and file that with DHCD this spring. So in terms of the 6th amendment to the Memorandum of Agreement that you have in front of you, the key components of that are, first and foremost, a mitigation fee of $672,000. So that's $10,500 per market rate unit. That was contemplated in the original MOA that was signed back in 2005 as part of this development, but was never paid because the condos were never developed. There's also a $100,000 fee in there as well to reimburse the town for any inspection fees associated with the construction period of the project. And sort of what we're seeking from the Board of Selectmen is a letter of support to the ZBA for our amendment to the comprehensive permit, and also support for the project as a LIP to DHCD down the line. And also opening, as being a LIP, So a third, because the town's a party to the regulatory agreement, and the town will be responsible for going, making sure we are compliant. Everything, all the paperwork we submit to you is, compliant with all the rules and regulations. If this were a traditional 40B, the lender would be responsible for that. But in the case of a friendly 40B or a LIP, the town is. So what we've done in the past is, funded the town a small amount annually if they needed to hire or outsource this to a third party to review all the paperwork and make sure everything's compliant. And that would be contemplated, I think, with the ZBA and written into that approval. And that is it. Any questions?
Great, thank you. Any questions from members of the board? Peter?
The ACHC voted to support this project, I believe, right? Is that correct?
We have not sought theirs.
You haven't gone to the Community Housing Corporation yet?
They're aware of the project. We don't have any official support yet. We're not doing this as a traditional where we do the LIP first and then the comp permit, because it's technically an amendment to a comp permit. And Paul, you can probably speak better to the legal proceeding here.
Yeah, so right now this is proceeding under the existing project eligibility approval. So it hasn't proceeded as a LIP yet. As we move forward with ZBA, we'll convert to a LIP. That's what we'll be seeking the town's approval of. And we'll be, I'm sure we'll be doing that in conjunction with the Affordable Housing, the authority in town.
Okay, because I thought that we signed the LIP applications before the applicants filed with the ZBA, but I may be wrong about it. Isn't that the normal LIP process?
If a comp permit originates through the LIP program, that would be the process, but we're actually proceeding as an amendment to a comp permit that had already received its state subsidizing approval through a prior existing subsidizing authority. So because we're amending something that's already received subsidizing approval, we're not in the LIP program yet. Once we begin going down the road of the comp permit approval, we'll then go to DHCD and apply for a LIP. So the order is a little bit different. Since
once you begin going down that road, is that your filing with the ZBA, you mean? Or you've already filed with the ZBA?
Exactly. As we get closer to approval by the ZBA, we'll then approach DHCD and convert to a LIP.
Okay. Well, okay, usually the ACHC would weigh in on this. I'm assuming they don't have any issues with this, but whatever, I mean, the town has some interest in trying to get this comp permit issued as soon as possible, assuming the ZBA, approves it. So will it drag it out if we don't submit the LIP application until later in the process?
We're going to be submitting the LIP as soon as possible, but we wouldn't want to submit before we are able to at least meet with the ZBA first and start to flesh out some issues that they may have. If we go to the DHCD too soon, the project might not be fully baked, and we just want to make sure we've at least consulted with the ZBA and bring them into the process of converting to the LIP.
Okay. Well, I guess if we approve this tonight, we're committing to supporting the LIP application. But I would encourage you to meet with the ACHC soon. I don't think they'll have any problems with it, but we usually like to see their support for these things. I guess knowing what I know about the project, I'm comfortable with voting for this, but so.
Thank you, Peter. Janet, questions?
If I may.
I've missed a lot of ACHC's meetings, so I probably have missed when they were talking about this project. As far as I'm concerned, they're very supportive of this project. It's included in all of the sort of listings of where we are with regard to our 10% goal. And I've also been, as liaison to the Design Review Board, I've been at least one discussion where they talked about the project after they had gone on a tour of a similar project, I guess in Sudbury. So they've invested, those members have invested a fair amount of time in evaluating the project, and I think that the applicants are incorporating some of the suggestions in the design landscaping and sort of the appearance, the design details and that sort of thing. So I'm very comfortable with approving this even without ACHC's formal approval. Yeah, it is a little bit unusual. We're so used to having things start first there, but this is an amendment of an existing permit as opposed to a brand-new application. So that, for me, accounts for the difference. I'm not an expert in it, but I'm going to trust other people to know.
I'm not an expert either, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
My only question was, so you said you're going to hopefully file the LIP in the spring. Do you have a sense of what that timeline is? Because 2 of us are going to be leaving the board on April 2nd, probably.
I'm not sure exactly. We want to make sure we meet with the ZBA first,
Right.
but I mean, we're in the process of putting the application together now because we would love to hit send and ship as soon as possible after the ZBA, so.
Okay, and I guess this might be a question for the lawyer then, is if we sign this as this board of 5 saying that we're comfortable and we can send the letter to the ZBA, that makes sense to me, because we would do that while we're still all on the board. But if we do that and also say that we'd support the LIP, but then there are new members of the board, is that still, I've always been told that we can't like bind future boards to something. So is there a concern there, and what's your thought through that?
Right, yeah, that's a good question. I anticipate that we'll be able to have the LIP submitted before April. Okay. Given the early acceptance that people have shown in the ZBA. Yeah. But I can certainly look more into that if you'd like. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm fine doing it for now. I would just say that that's probably something to keep in mind, that, we will be a different board as of April, probably 2nd. So, and we've got 2 meetings. Yeah.
But I will be then a former board member and still a resident and able to come to meetings.
Right, yes. So, oh, yeah, no, certainly. We can come and say our support, but we don't have the, we're
we don't have the authority,
but, Right, exactly. So I don't want to bind a future,
Yeah.
I mean, you'll presumably still have the majority of the board on there, so that should be okay.
Correct.
But just something to keep in mind.
Thanks for bringing it to our attention. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, what would be the timeline for the process to play out and the amendment to the comprehensive permit approved? What's the sense?
Well, essentially, so our first step would be meeting with the ZBA on February 21st, and I imagine there will probably be another meeting after that if we hear some comments from the public and want to incorporate any of those changes, or the ZBA wants us to incorporate any of those changes. Then after that, approval, and how long is the appeals period? 20 days. 20 days. Mm-hmm. So I think hopefully our goal would be by the end of May to have, conservatively, an approval and have gone through the appeals period.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions from members of the board? Comments or questions from the public? And I'll just ask you if you don't mind.
Yes.
Sorry, it's an awkward.
Take all my papers with me.
Jim Snyder Grant, West Acton. There is a big crisis in, low-income and moderate-income housing in this town, so I'm really happy this project is going forward, and that the board is so enthusiastic about it. I did wonder if it would be okay to find out from the applicants if they've done any modeling about the utilities, the utility use in these apartments, either the cost or the amount of energy that'll be used either for electricity or natural gas. If we can make these units energy efficient enough, there's a bunch of those roofs that are pointed really nicely for solar. We could bring those energy bills down a lot, which would be of great benefit both to the residents and to the environment around them. So I was just wondering if that would be okay to ask.
Certainly, if you want to respond.
I'm happy to speak to that. So Avalon.
Do you mind just doing the microphone for TV audience?
Sure. So at Avalon, so we've taken a lot of, as a company, general green measures. So we now install only LED lights everywhere, indoor and outdoor, at all our properties. Overall, as a company, improving irrigation landscape-wise. So I've got a stat here, right? We've increased the amount of water we recycle at all our communities by over 7%. We actually started a big solar and began the execution of our solar strategy at a few communities. We're actually piloting battery storage solutions at a property in the Northeast as well. So happy to look into this. The This project will be Energy Star. We have a certain set of green building standards that we build to. I have not done any modeling specifically on the utility usage per unit, but we find that honestly one of the best measures is we individually meter every single unit. So when someone's responsible for their own electricity, it makes them a little more conservative, and we find that to be one of the best measures. But happy to look in to see if we've done any modeling as a company, and I'm sure we have the data somewhere about energy usage at our Northeast departments. Sure. Thank you.
Deborah Symes, Concord Road. Couple of questions, couple of thoughts. So I don't know who supplies water to the existing Avalon project. Is that the district, our district, or is it Concord or Westford, or?
I believe it's town of Acton.
Yeah, I think it's the Acton Water
District. It's the Acton Water District, and that's the proposal for this other phase as well?
Correct, yeah, I can.
Even though the second phase never got built, all the utilities were stubbed right up directly to the site. So the water would be town of Acton. The sewer is actually a private wastewater treatment plant that we own and operate, and the capacity is 90,000 gallons, and right now we're peaking at like 44,000 gallons, so we've got the room there.
Thank you. And does anybody know whether the district has looked at the implications of adding all this supply?
I know they get asked to make comments when it goes to the ZBA, but I don't know if they have already or not.
Yeah, they were involved with the review of the initial project in its earlier way it was set up, and they'll be involved with the Board of Appeals and provide input to that process.
And they're comfortable as far as we know so far? We don't know.
I think they just received the plans last week, so I don't know that I could say either way, but they'll let the parties know.
Yeah, thank you. And then my other, so should I assume that natural gas is going to be supplied to this project? Y'all know how I feel about this. So I won't go on and on, but there is always the option of encouraging developers not to go that route, of encouraging them to do something different, i.e. air source heat pumps, et cetera. I'll just repeat it ad nauseum. And then my last thing is whether there's been, I'm wondering what the net tree taking is going to be for this. It looks as if you're just clear cutting that whole loop and then reinstalling stuff. So I'm wondering if we have a sense of the net loss of biomass from that. And the second part of that is there any reason not to consider not clear cutting the whole thing, but to take trees more judiciously from the site so that existing and perhaps more environmentally valuable and mature trees might be saved?
I don't have the answer off the top of my head about the trees that are coming down, but I can show you really quickly what it looks like today. So right now, this is already cleared.
Oh, this is
that was already cleared as part of the first phase, yeah. No, it's okay, but we are going to be taking, and we aren't building, this red line is the conservation restriction easement line, so we can't build beyond that anyways. And nor are we going to, because there's a very steep drop off that happens right here. So we do take a little more, like, I'm trying to hold this thing steady, this way, but, and I can get we have it, I think, in the permit application. I can get these guys the number, or you the number, exactly.
Thank you.
So I would again just urge the board to urge these folks to consider not just wiping out everything, but seeing what can be saved. Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, any other comments or questions from the public? Seeing none, any other comments or questions from members of the board, or does somebody want to make a motion?
I just have one comment to those issues about the design and green initiatives. Really, making those to the ZBA is much more effective than us. I mean, they need to be addressed to the ZBA. It puts us in a little bit of a difficult position to be saying we're going to support this when we might want more green heat pumps, whatever, I guess. But it looks like we have to do this tonight, right? I mean, if you go into the ZBA February 21st, you're looking for us to approve this tonight, right? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Quickie. So to that query, I'm wondering, is there any way that you can do a conditional approval? I have no idea. Is that a thing?
We're not approving the project. We're right now being asked to sign a memorandum of agreement. So I don't know, and while you know my sympathies, I don't know that I think that's the best route to condition an MOA that's been worked out. I think the public making comments to the ZBA is probably the better way to go. But yes.
So if I may, so the active support to the ZBA is simply to write a letter.
Right.
And we can work with you in that process, and if you want to make certain recommendations, obviously the ZBA is the authority for reviewing the project, but if you have any concerns and you want to, just as any citizen here could show up to the ZBA meeting, if you want to voice any of your concerns, that can take the form of something that you mentioned in a letter of support to the ZBA.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Paragraph 3 requires that we submit a letter of support to the ZBA. So, I mean, I don't see any problem with our saying that we're generally supportive, and maybe some members, in response to audience comments had suggested that maybe, well, we could just say that we got audience comments, and it would be helpful if, if the ZBA were to take those into consideration. But I'm not prepared at this point to sort of insist that the ZBA take audience comments into consideration, because there's a lot of other stuff that they're going to be dealing with that we haven't dealt with. So, and I know that there's generally a lot of interest in getting this project approved so that we can achieve safe harbor. There's a lot of chatter about safe harbor, so.
Yes. Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion? And if you want to include comments other than just being generally supportive of it in the letter to the ZBA, please say so in your motion, because I want to know specifically to write in these letters.
Are we moving to approve the signing of this?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I move to approve the 6th Amendment to the Memorandum of Agreement regarding Avalon Phase 2.
Okay, Janet made a motion. Joan seconded. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and then you can just talk to the town manager and we'll work on getting that letter.
We'll follow up. Thank you very much.
Appreciate
it.
Okay. Up next is a discussion of the open meeting law complaint that we received on January 11th, 2019. So this was a complaint we received related to the 354 Main Street Master Planning public forum held on January 10th, at which, as the chair of that committee, I was presenting. Selectmen Barry and Benson were also in attendance of the meeting, and Peter spoke during the open hearing portion. As has been discussed before, attendance of a quorum of a board at a public, otherwise noticed meeting is not a deliberation and is not a meeting of that board, and so it does not need to be noticed. While Selectman Barry spoke, that is also allowed under the provisions of the open meeting law, because it's not a deliberation as long as the member is speaking during the public kind of portion of the meeting, and as long as the other members of the board aren't deliberating. So I don't believe I spoke to either John or Peter that night at all. I know Peter and John did not speak to each other that night at all. And there are multiple, I believe there are at least 4 rulings from the Attorney General specifically on this issue that say that this is not a deliberation or a meeting that needs to be noticed. So with all of that in mind, I just want to put all of that out there. Again, when we receive an open meeting law complaint, it does not mean that there is a violation. I do not believe that there was a violation in this instance, and would be looking for the board's vote to authorize me to work with town council to respond as such to this complaint. Are there questions from members of the board?
Second,
okay.
And I just have to say I'm glad I missed that meeting.
It was actually quite a good public forum.
One less reason for me to get really irritated, so, yeah.
Okay, so Joan's made a motion.
I have a question before we talk. Mr. Manager, do you have a tally of the legal fees to date that we spent in defending against these serial complaints?
It is something that I think you've asked me to look into, and I'm still looking into it. But it hasn't been. It's been certainly a costly project for our team to work on over the last few months. I'll have that number before you finish talking.
Yeah, I think it was, if I remember off the top of my head, $30,000. But so it is significant, and again, the vast majority of these are related to things that the Attorney General has already ruled that are not issues. So it is
we have
frustrating.
Money to burn in this town, right? It just
right. Well,
now, I would just say that Katie has described it exactly. It's very clearly written into the open meeting law that this attendance at this meeting was excluded from the definition of meeting under the statute, that I was allowed to speak to the board in the words of the statute, so long as the visiting members communicate only by open participation in the meeting on those matters under discussion in the host body, which is what I did. It's easy to file a complaint, but I would suggest that anyone who wants to file a complaint ought to read the statute before they raise these what I consider not founded allegations.
thank you, Peter. I think it's important for members of boards to attend public forums like that. It's a good way to get a sense of what's going on. Many of us do, and it's a good thing.
One of the other named parties in the suit, I have something to say as well. With these serial complaints that have been filed against the Selectmen since September, there's been questions and concerns from the public, and I'm glad we're addressing them in this public forum, which I assume is being broadcast and maybe replayed. I was at a meeting with a fellow who our kids played soccer together years ago yesterday morning to talk about Kelly's Corner. And as we were sitting down at Starbucks, he said to me, can we meet, or am I putting you in violation of the open meeting law? So I explained to him, and I'm explaining now, the purpose of the open meeting law is to prevent chicanery. Now, the state legislature conveniently excluded themselves from this statute. Chicanery is when a quorum of the planning board would go out and have dinner with a developer who has business before them. Otherwise, the balance is between transparency in the process and efficiency for the governmental bodies to do their business. There are 5 exceptions to the definition of a meeting under the open meeting law. Exception 3 specifically says members of a public body may attend a meeting of another public body provided they communicate only by open participation, semicolon. However, they may not deliberate at such gatherings. So disputes then arose with these people who follow the open meeting law. They don't even have to live in the town that they're filing complaints against, as to what is deliberation? You know, what's the issue there? I had attended with Janet Adachi, this was one of the serial complaints, I think it was back in June, a meeting of the ALG. So it was Janet and I there, and Katie and Joan as members of the ALG body. And the issue there is if Katie or Joan would make a comment such as, well, our board is likely to go this way on this issue, is that a deliberation since 4 of us are there? Since then, there's been a series of opinions. The one that I'm aware of is, it says basically that we may attend consistent with exception 3, and we may participate, we may speak, and the rationale for that is our comments are made in public, in a public forum. Now, immediately after this meeting on January 10th of the 348 to 364, I think you call it reuse committee, is that it? Okay. I was talking with Nancy Tavernier in the lobby of this building. Tara Fredericks, who's here tonight, came up to me and said, you people violated the open meeting law. Oh, yes, you did.
All right, we're not getting into this.
And I said to Tara, before you fire off your cannons, go and read the recent opinions of the Attorney General's office. The next morning at 9:30, we got notice from Stephen Ballard of Boxborough of his 16th or 17th complaint that Mr. Berry and I violated the open meeting law. And in his complaint, it's very interesting. He couched his allegations 3 times on information and belief. 3 of the 5 members of the current board. On information and belief, all 3 were present and clearly functioning as a quorum. On information and belief, board member Peter Berry, Esquire, was the member who spoke. That's lawyer speak, couching it that I wasn't in attendance, I didn't watch it on television, I heard it from a third party. So, Ms. Fredericks, I assume that came from you, and I'm not at all happy about that. If you wanted to file the complaint yourself. Don't turn it over to Mr. Ballard. Stand up and do it yourself, and we could respond to you.
Okay. No, I don't want to deal, I'm not dealing with this kind of back and forth. If you want to talk to John after, you may. I don't think that we need to make accusations. We have a complaint from Steve Ballard tonight. That is what we are responding to, and I'm asking for a motion related to authorizing me to respond based on the points that were brought up earlier, that this is not a violation for the reasons that I stated prior.
Someone just made an
No,
accusation.
so we already had, no, listen, it's up to me. I'm not allowing you to respond.
Second.
I'm not getting back. So we actually already had a motion, a second, and then had discussion, which is allowed. So Joan had made a motion and Janet had seconded previously. So we will take a vote on that motion, which was to authorize me as the chair to work with council to respond to this complaint. Based on the fact that it's not a violation. Yes, so all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Okay. Up next, item number 6 is the board to approve the FY20 budget. Mr. Manager. And I believe
Thank
we're
you.
gonna...
On December 18th, I presented the town manager's recommended budget. We've had numerous discussions and conversations, including a great day here on Saturday a few weeks ago. And I look forward to any further comments that you may have on the recommended budget. It is, I have printed before you, I believe, with the green and yellow on it, just an overview of the budget that I presented, just so it's fresh in your minds. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Yeah, and I think we want to tie this in as well with a discussion related to that of approving that budget number is tied to the discussion that we had with ALG. So you also have in front of you the sort of updated ALG plan, and FY20 is the column in highlighted in yellow. I will note there's one issue is that the school district has voted to lower their budget and therefore their assessment, and that's not reflected on here. So based on the numbers at their budget Saturday, this past Saturday, which I had the pleasure of attending, they voted unanimously to recommend the proposed budget, which would have an assessment to the town of Acton of, just want to get it correct, $61,235,254, which is a I believe 2.09% increase over last year. So that's now reflected in there. So if you take that number, essentially where you take that out of is the use of town reserves. So that number should read, instead of the 1,859, that number should be $1,706,320. And so the conversation that ALG had at our last meeting on January 17th was related to the discussion that we had as committee prior about how to sort of handle the use of reserves and unused levy capacity for this coming year. And essentially the agreement that the members of the ALG agreed to bring back to their boards was the reduction in the Acton Boxborough Regional School District assessment to that lower number that I just read, which was a reduction of about whatever it was, $150,000. We lowered the use of, lowered essentially our overlay by $150,000. And we would have used $1.7 million in reserves, and then we currently have $606,000 in unused levy, and so we would use, no wait.
The agreement that, the discussion that we brought back, or that, that was discussed at our last board meeting was to have, use all of the tax levy.
Right, and now we're saying, right.
And now the proposal is to leave $152,000 under the levy.
Right, exactly.
Which represents a compromise that was reached by the parties of the ALG as part of the discussion.
So it was sort of a way of the schools were taking $150,000 out. We were putting we were putting a little bit more into reserves than we had initially wanted to do, and the Finance Committee is agreeing to leave to use more of the unused levy than they wanted to, essentially. So it's a compromise on everybody's part, which was really great. And I think what ALG is sort of all about. So, so the unused levy would be 450, we have 606,000, we would use 456,000 of unused levy, leaving that 150,000. So that's kind of the ALG proposal, and so in addition to approving along with approving the FY20 budget, we just also want to seek the board's approval of this way of divvying things up. So we use essentially 1.7 million in reserves this year, 456,000 in unused levy capacity, leaving $150,000 in unused levy capacity, and then the school's assessment is down $150,000, which I know is a lot of numbers I'm throwing at you, so let me know if you have questions.
Where's the, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Where is the unused levy shown in the
income?
In the income, is it under, just under the tax levy?
Yeah. It's under the tax levy. So we essentially, the tax levy is $450,000 above 2.5%.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I was commenting last time that about the percentage of the tax increase, and I think it was pointed out that, well, if the valuation of the property goes up, then the percentage goes down. Well, that's true, but the number that you pay stays the same, even if the percentage goes down, because you have a higher valuation. It's still $427 is the increase in the tax bill. So, you know, I'm fine with using the unused levy. I'm okay with that, but the increase overall in the single-family tax bill is $427, whatever percentage that works out to be. So.
Yeah, that's the average. Obviously, some people's home values might go up more than others, you know, whatever. So that's the average, but yes, that number would stay the same. Other questions or comments? Yeah, and again, I felt like it was a really collaborative process this year, and it was, and we're quite early, frankly, to be getting it all done, which is really great. And much thanks goes to new town manager and a new superintendent for sort of jumping into this process and doing a really good job and helping us get there. So, in addition to that, are there questions on the FY20 budget for the town manager?
If I may, how did you resolve the $16,000 shortfall in the library budget?
So we met with Danielle, the director, and we worked on a few different ideas that would allow them to maintain services level to what they are today. It involved using some of the resources for some of their IT expenses that they had envisioned, and there's also a state aid account that if they run into a shortfall, they agreed to look at as a potential revenue source. But I believe we can do it without doing that next year, and we're going to work together to make sure that happens.
So this was just a one-year thing using the state aid component?
It's not. We haven't modeled for them to use it at this point because I think we could achieve the level services just through vacancies and other things that'll happen. But if for some reason they don't work out like we think they will, then the Board of Library Trustees would consider then using a few $1,000s from the
Oh,
state
okay,
aid.
so as of this budget, you're not using any of the state aid money?
Correct.
To make it very good, thank you.
And I'll say I was at the Library Trustees meeting on Thursday night, and they were supportive of if, as John mentioned, if for whatever reason, they do sort of go over that they would be willing to use the state aid for essentially non-personnel costs. So supplementing materials or equipment if needed, but that they don't anticipate having to do that. And they were supportive, or they were appreciative of the town manager working to figure out how to maintain services, and they were appreciative of the comments on Budget Saturday and support of the library. And are hoping potentially to get finance committee members in to learn what it's like to work in a library. So we'll see if that comes together. Yes.
That's our community center.
Yeah, exactly. No, it really is. Okay, any other questions or comments from the audience? And otherwise, the motion, I have a sense from the board on ALG, so Joan and I can take that back to the next meeting. Is there a motion to approve the FY20 budget?
So moved.
All right, Janet moves, Joan seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. Okay, item number 8, the Acton Boxborough Farmers Market temporary location recommendation. Mr. Manager.
Thank you. Thank you for approving the budget.
Yeah.
So as we discussed at your last meeting, the farmers market organization identified the potential that they may not be able to operate on the site that they've used in the past few years due to a potential real estate transaction and potential development that may go on there. So we worked with a team in Town Hall to identify a suitable location to serve as a backup if their current location is in fact unavailable for the season. And we looked at it in terms of a one-year situation. We weren't really trying to identify a long-term relocation spot because I think that would have been a larger task. So I think we really focused on where we would recommend appropriate place for it to go for 1 year. And I think initially we had talked about being behind this building, but a lot of the conversations that we had following that meeting were that keeping it in West Acton was a priority and worth something that we should really consider. So I think in the end, the group is recommending, and I'm recommending, that we modify the way we use Pearl Street and include a portion of Windsor Ave to allow them to, rather than spilling over and setting up on the property that they used to set up on, do some of that setting up on actually Windsor Ave. This would require us to have the street be closed for a while on the Sundays that the market is in operation. Our police department and fire department were aware and are aware of this, and they feel comfortable that they can work around it. I have reached out to the housing authority that has property down the street, and they think that initially they would want to have more time to talk to their residents, but they believe that having it stay close by would be outweigh any trade-offs of having the street closed. So that's what we have before you. I know there's representatives from the market who may have additional comments, but our recommendation is to close a portion of Windsor Ave and use it.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I'll ask if there are additional questions from members of the board, and then I'll ask for the farmers market group. Yeah, I guess my only question is just related to the people that live along that portion of Windsor Street, or Windsor Avenue, that now it does seem like they'd have to go, I guess, a bit further to kind of then turn around to get back over. I don't know. I mean, I know it doesn't impact anybody's ability to get in or out of their property, and I think keeping it in the same location largely makes a lot of sense and seems preferable to me. But I just want to make sure we're not creating like a untenable situation for those residents. And I know it's only on 1 day a week for a few hours, but I do just want to make sure we're not kind of majorly inconveniencing people to such a degree that we're going to get a huge flurry of complaints. I mean, I hope not, but I don't know, outside of the AHA, if there's a way to reach out to others along that strip or something to just to give them even a heads up that might be happening, and to say, here's who to direct, your comments or any concerns about that too, just so there's kind of a process in place. And I mean, again, the hope is that maybe it might not even be impacted this season. That would be ideal. It's just we're less in control of that then. So it's good to have the backup. But that was my one thought. So, Deborah, are you speaking on behalf of the group?
I think that I am. First up, I really want to thank the board and the town manager in particular, because he's been on this. And it's been great, and he and his staff have been very creative in thinking about how to come up with a reasonable backup plan for us. Obviously, as we said last time, the preference would be to stay on Pearl Street for this one more season, if we can. And I mentioned this to John earlier, that I think our thinking is that once that project, assuming when it goes to ZBA and whatever happens there, if it emerges from the ZBA hearing or hearings, maybe they're not hearings, meetings, that unless there's some reason not to, we thought that if they ultimately have a go-ahead, that we might contact Zuratias directly to say, what is your rough timeline? When might you expect to break ground? And the thinking being that possibly we could be on just regular Pearl, you know, until the point when they do break ground, if there's no objection from the board or the town manager, and then shift ourselves around the corner for the balance of the season if need be. So that's one thought. Another is that I did go visit that site and took my little giant tape measure and measured a whole bunch of things, and it seems like it could work. I think, as Katie said, the one concern, and I would hope that the town would reach out to, you know, the Windsor Ave folks to say, hey, if this has to go forward, this is a thing, and you have to drive a little farther, sorry, for, you know, a few hours for a few Sundays kind of thing. Because I don't expect they'll break ground in the beginning of season anyway. So I guess one question is, does anybody object if we had to do it to moving to like a split season, if they decide to break ground in September?
Mr. Manager.
I think that's one of the reasons that we've focused in on this location is that it provides for flexibility that if the first 3 weeks you set up where you set up before, and then the fourth week you have to shift things to Windsor because of the construction activities, it allows you to do that. And even changing throughout the season, depending on what's going on that property, which is more complicated to think about. But I think generally we would be comfortable as long as you give notice to us of anything that would impact what we need to be planning for. We'd be comfortable with either scenario.
Okay, great. And then the only other thing, and I mentioned this to John as well, which is I went out with my tape measure, and as I looked at configurations, the one thing we don't know, and that if this all proceeds, if we end up having to be on Windsor, or that part of Windsor in any case, the one thing we don't know and we'll need to get guidance from is, from the fire chief, I assume, is what kind of turning radius, if they need to bring the giant ladder truck from either Pearl or Mass Ave, you know, once we're around the corner there, what kind of radius they need, because that would affect how we would configure stalls and the number of stalls we could configure. So that's the one little piece, you know, if this whole thing goes forward through ZBA, that we will want to check in with you about. But otherwise, I think we're all of the feeling that we're delighted to be able to stay in West Acton for this season one way or another, and appreciate your help hugely. And then we will presume, if you guys go ahead and approve this, then we will be in touch with the town manager's office about our annual contract that we do with the town. Is there anything else I can answer while I'm standing here, or no?
Does anybody have any questions? Nope, then no, you're good.
Thank you.
Okay, comments or questions from the audience?
Tara Fredericks, West Acton. I think this is an awesome idea. I just texted my dad to see if he'll complain. His driveway is right in front of Pearl Street there, but I think we can talk him out of complaining. Steve Ballard, on the other hand, I don't know that I can talk him out of complaining, and I'll write to you on the Beacon about that so that the public understands where I come from there. But thank you very much for working on that. It was really helpful. I like that. Thank you.
Okay. So any other comments from members, or do you want to approve this as sort of the backup, I guess, plan for the farmers market?
Move to approve as a backup plan.
Okay, so
Second.
Joan has made a motion to approve as a backup. Janet seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, and thank you, Mr. Manager, for working on this very quickly and getting a very thorough examination of all of it and the a really great solution and creative solution.
Well, we have a great team down in the building, so it helps when everybody comes together. So
yeah, no, it was really well. It was easy to read and understand what the thinking was around it, and I appreciated that. So thank you, and thank you for the farmers market folks for showing up and letting us know as early as you could, so we could come up with this plan. All right, up next is the Veterans District discussion.
Thank you. So the town of Boxborough approached us earlier this year, or I guess later last year, about the idea of forming a district for veteran services. The town of Boxborough had or has a veterans officer who's looking to transition out of the business. And we have a very capable one who does a great job. And they've actually, people from Boxborough have actually been reaching out to Jim over the last 6 months to a year, and he's been providing ad hoc and intermittent services to Boxborough veterans already. And so what I'm asking you this evening is to make sure, before I do any more work on this, that you are comfortable with the idea of forming a district with Boxborough, And if you are comfortable with that concept, what we would do is the town administrator and I would work together with our teams to identify what a district would look like and come up with a draft memorandum of agreement for the communities to consider, and then we would bring that to the board for your consideration. And to form a district, it doesn't require a town meeting vote. As far as we can tell, it just requires both boards and with the memorandum of agreement. So the primary thing that we would be doing in a situation like this is make sure that our residents and veterans would not be impacted, and we feel strongly that they would not. And I would suggest that any MOA or agreement that we enter, if you do decide to go in that direction, would be structured in such a way that if service levels are impacted, that we would need to address it. So I'm just open to any questions or comments.
Questions? John?
I've been cautioned in entering into agreements with Boxborough that you've really got to be clear that they're going to hold up their end of the financial obligation. So when you have that discussion, you know, they'll want the service, they'll want the benefits. Are they willing to pay their end of it? And not once we're into the agreement, then we renegotiate, you know, costs to it.
The district would be very well structured and be formalized. It wouldn't be an ad hoc thing. So the agreement that I would bring to you would have very specific financial terms,
very specific,
which would be a contract. So I have no concern about that.
And that those terms, you won't know that they be honored as time goes by, because that's where there have been some issues in the past, I understand.
I'm optimistic. I don't see that as a concern, but I appreciate the feedback.
I'll also note that in the sort of guide for establishing a Veteran Services District, which is quite thorough as I read through it, it does require that we have that the Massachusetts Department of Veteran Services reviews Veterans Districts agreement and reviews it kind of annually initially, and then every 2 years. So if they thought there were any issues, there's that, you know, there. It also just takes a vote of the Board of Selectmen to enter into it and a vote of the Board of Selectmen to exit into it. So that's another area of, you know, we have the ability to get out of it, and that there is a, it wasn't an oversight council per se, I can't remember the exact term, but that would be created to oversee it. That is my understanding for the kind that we would be talking about, where it's 2 towns, that I believe it would be the chair of each Board of Selectmen and the town manager or designee. I couldn't tell if it was an and or an or, I don't recall, would be on that kind of oversight group, which again, I'm struggling with what the exact phrasing was. But so I think there are a lot of kind of protections in place there. But Janet, I saw you had a...
Yeah, I was wondering if the idea is that Jim would go to Boxborough, or they'd have an office there, or they would everybody come to Acton, or would you have a Boxborough location?
Well, it would be, he would not go to there. He would work out of 30 Sudbury as he does now, and provide a certain, right now we're talking about up to 4 hours per week. And that would be the term that we're talking about now. And if that level of work increases, it would be a cause for us to renegotiate the terms. But right now, the way it's set up, he would field calls, take appointments, maybe do a site visit, you know, a home visit, or like he does otherwise. But he wouldn't necessarily hold office hours in Boxborough, at least in our current way we're envisioning it.
I mean, Boxborough is at least a small enough generally population that I assume the vet numbers are maybe proportionally smaller, so that it's not as if he's serving another town that's the size of Acton, and where there might be a much larger population, and then we'd have to think about staffing up to help him cover all of the demand. But anyhow, no, I think it's a good idea. And yeah, notwithstanding some of the difficulties we've had in the past with certain services, like the community services coordinator, there was a time when Boxborough wanted to use part of our community services coordinator, and she was at a point where she needed to clone herself to be able to handle all of the demand just in our town. So Boxborough ended up hiring their own, so, which I think was a good idea too. But anyhow, very good, thank you.
There are many minimum staffing chart here. So I assume we'd fall between 20,000 and 35,000. We have 22. Boxborough doesn't have more than a 5 or 6, I think, right?
Yeah, we should be in that range.
Yeah, so it requires one full-time director of Veteran Services District, which I assume would be Jim, and one full-time clerical staff. I don't know, does he have a secretary now? Do you know?
We would, yes, he has administrative support.
Okay.
But it's something where we'd work with the state and make sure that they're comfortable with the arrangement, because this requirement, is very comprehensive. But I think that, it's a state law that if you have more than 12,000, you need to have a full-time person, in which we're complying. I think that in creating a district, we wouldn't fall out of compliance. And if we did, we wouldn't do it. I wouldn't recommend the district.
Right, as long as that's not adding additional staff, if he already has this clerical support, that's fine. So, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, that was my question, because it does just seem that it requires both the full-time, which I know we have, for the district, a full-time person and a full-time clerical. So I didn't know if, I wasn't sure that he had a full-time clerical person, but I'm sure that can be also worked out with the state in this approval of the district itself. And and I found here it's a district board that is created under the kind of DVS's guidelines for creating a veteran service district. There's a district board that is composed of the mayor's designee of a city and the chairman of the Board of Selectmen or his designee of each of the towns, if any, included in said district, and the town manager or his designee in a municipality with a town council form of government, if any, included in said district, and that the district appoints, fixes the compensation of, and can remove the director of Veterans Services of said district. Again, I think it's, these are contemplating ones, particularly where I think there are multiple towns or cities involved. And I believe the example in this was out in Western Mass, where there were 6 or 7 towns forming a district, which is a much different issue than 2 towns that share a school district and work quite closely on a number of things. So I don't foresee there being really any issues. And again, Jim, my understanding is veterans in Boxborough already go to Jim, and this is a great way to formalize that and to ensure that he's being given kind of the support and the authority to help them out. So I'm quite supportive of it. Yes, Peter.
Yeah, I can't pass up this opportunity to give a shout out to Jim. I'm a veteran myself. I've worked with Jim on veterans issues. He's excellent. He has real empathy for veterans, works very hard. His outreach efforts are great, all kinds of mailings about veterans benefits. And I'm sure the veterans of Boxborough will be getting a real good service by allowing Jim to become the director of this district.
Yes, hear, hear. Any questions or comments from members of the audience? Yes.
Hi, Jeff Burgart, Alcott Street. Does Boxborough have to have a full-time? Do they have 12,000 people?
No. And I don't think they have a full-time person right now, so no.
Okay. If they did, but they have a lot less load than us, if I was from Boxborough, I would be negotiating percentage and say, well, we'll pay for 20% since we have 20% of the veterans. On the other hand, if they had to have a full-time and we have to have a full-time, we could negotiate, from our point of view, half and half, because both towns would save half a person. So I would just encourage, as you negotiate, Mr. Manager, that you don't have them in this little incremental kind of carving out, well, we're only going to use a little piece of Jim, and so we'll only pay for a little piece. I think it needs to be fully burdened, and your other support staff that's going to happen, Jim's square footage, his phone bills, everything should be part of that, so that we don't have them thinking that they're getting this great deal, because Acton's going to pay more than its fair share. And as John has mentioned, they've always tried to negotiate that and then even renegotiate. Thank you.
I'd like to not completely disparage our neighbor of Boxborough in these conversations, and I don't think that, just for those who might be watching and who live in Boxborough, that I would not like the message from this board or the public to be that we think Boxborough or Boxboroughans are a bunch of cheapskates who are trying to get a lot for nothing from Acton, and that's at least personally not how I feel. I think that this is an opportunity that can be to the benefit of both communities. We currently have a full-time Veteran Services Officer in Jim who does a wonderful job, and Boxborough, who has a significantly smaller population than us, who is not required to have a full-time staff, but who does want to provide these services, is trying to find a way to do that economically and to a way that will benefit both of our communities. Again, we are two communities that are already joined through our school district and through a number of other ways. And I think it's an opportunity that will be beneficial to both of us and to further that relationship. And I, for one at least, look forward to working with Boxborough on this issue. And I just want to clarify the message that we're sending. So, Mr. Manager, are you just looking for a sense of the board tonight, or you, and then you'll bring back a specific
Yes.
MOU?
So there's communities out there. There's many examples. Melrose, Wakefield. There's plenty of places that we'll use as models to try to come up with a district. We won't start from scratch. And once we do that work, I'll come back to you with a draft to see what you think. And if you like where it's going, we'll come back again with the final. And we'd like to have it be effective for July 1, if possible. So it would take some work in the next few months, but we're both committed to doing it. The new town administrator we're there, I have a good working relationship with, and he cares about the right things, and he wants to provide a service to the veterans there, and I think we could work together. So
yeah, that's great. Okay. Well, thank you, and go forth, and we look forward to seeing that. Okay, item number 10 is the draft Town of Acton social media policy. Back to you, Mr. Manager.
So, busy night tonight. So I think when I started here, and as I was being considered for the position, I think one of the things that I heard from both the public and from the board and the hiring committee is that we wanted to delve into new ways to communicate with the public. And since we started 6 months ago, we've really ramped up our use of social media. But before we push it out to other departments, which I'd really like to do, I want to make sure that the process and the policy is something that everybody knows and that the board supports and that we have in black and white on our website and in our personnel manual, so people have expectations on how to use it properly. Because one thing that I say about social media is that every tweet is a press release, so that if you have people on your team or in your staff that don't see it that way, it can create problems. So I think this document kind of lays out that message in a very detailed way. This is a policy that we've worked on with staff, and town council has provided their comments. And I'm asking for your approval tonight, or if you have comments and questions, I'd like to address them and see as soon as I can get your approval. I'd love to have it. I have behind me just a few examples of how we've been using social media, and really the way that it allows us to communicate, not just on important and timely information, but also on the good things and the little things that you don't really have a way to share. That's hard to see, but the top left is just a Twitter post it's a Facebook post that we put about the sidewalk forum. We sent it out last week. 500 people saw it, 52 people clicked on it, and a handful of people liked it. So that's reach, that's audience that, if we just put it on our website, they probably wouldn't know about the sidewalk forum, but because of the social media platform, they found out about it. Another bottom left is the pictures of the students that were lifeguards that saved a child over the summer. We had an event there, and we put it on social media, and it got some attention, and that's great. We love to have good news and share it. And then this other one on the right is Detective Chris Priel. He was out at a scene monitoring traffic, and he helped some kids get over this huge puddle, and a woman that works for one of the local news stations happened to be there and captured it, and then she put it online, and it had, it's had 13,000 views since last week, and so we engaged with it, and we said that's Chris Priel doing what safety officials do and help those in need, and it's gotten a lot of attention. So, there's always scary stories and bad stories about things that happen in social media, and so we want to try to set up an infrastructure to keep our staff and officials away from that with this policy to allow us to really harness the power of some of the examples that you see behind us. So I look forward to your questions.
Okay, any questions from members of the board? Janet?
No questions. I just wanted to say kudos for developing all of these sort of outreach methods and also the policy. I don't know very much about social media policy, so it looked fine to me, a lot of legal language and other things, but the sort of plain English guidance made a lot of sense to me. It is the kind of thing that people should be reminded of so that we keep things that we're doing as public figures or public officials on the up and up. But no, I think it's great. I think that it's great that we're moving into the 21st century. So anyhow, but thank you for all of the work so far.
Peter?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what kind of staff time this might incur. You have a section here that requires that offensive kind of things be removed. It includes content that is abusive, defamatory, disparages an individual, or contains personal attacks, insults, or threatening language, unless otherwise protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution or the Mass Constitution. So you said you ran it by town council, which is great, and obviously it protects First Amendment speech. Being public figures, we are subject to the slings and arrows of public comment. This came up at town meeting a while ago. There was some pushback that people who were personally attacking elected officials should be allowed to do so. Town council weighed in on that, but who's the person who checks all of these every day and removes these offensive comments if necessary?
So our IT team, Mark, oversees a group of folks that really focus on our website, but we're also, as we're bringing new people into the organization, when there's vacancies, we're looking at their job descriptions and we're identifying any folks that we think would be suited to help out with our outreach efforts. Part of the reason that we've been so deliberate with putting out social media channels, and right now we just have the main ones, the Town of Acton ones, but we're looking to do a police department one, and other departments want to step in, and before we would agree, there's an approval process in here, and before we would agree to implement that, we would make sure that there's staff resources to meet these requirements, and if there aren't, we would wait until there was a time that they are. But I believe that we do have some opportunities, both with our existing staff and people that we plan to bring into the organization that will be able to handle this. And I think it's appropriate, and I think it's a great way to connect with our audience.
John?
Thank you for bringing us kicking and screaming into the 21st century. How many, what are our social media platforms? We have Facebook, Twitter? Instagram. Okay.
Instagram and then LinkedIn, and we'll probably hang there until we master those.
Okay.
And if we have people that really want to branch out into other ones, we'll take it on a case-by-case basis. But those are the primary ones that we would be focusing on.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo my thanks. It was a really comprehensive policy, and I liked it because I was reading it and then would have a question, and then my question would get answered while reading the rest of the policy. So I appreciate that. I think it's really smart to, have what essentially all employees are responsible for or allowed to do, and then what, the specific employees who have been approved by you to communicate through our various sites are required to do. I think that's important. And this isn't a question for the policy, but do you think, so will this be something that people, staff will receive a copy of and sign like they do the IT use, or is it just a policy that you'll circulate? And do you think you'll have any kind of training or just go over it with staff in some way, or is the proposal just to kind of put it out there and then focus on the people who you are specifically identifying to use these accounts?
So just to answer your last question, I think that we will be doing some trainings, and I think we wanted to just have this framework approved by the board. Sometimes with a policy like this, we would just push it out, but this is such an important issue that we wanted to make sure that the board supports it and that the board signs it, so that everybody knows that when I'm saying, one thing that I think I'd like to call your attention to is item 3.2, where it says only social media accounts that are listed at www.actonma.gov/social media shall be considered official accounts. So that speaks to an issue that happens in many communities where there are sites that people put up that appear to be town sites, or even individuals or groups and friends groups, all these other groups which may or may not be doing great things. But it's important for us to identify that only those sites that are listed here shall be considered official accounts. And I think that's just part of the process. And then anyone that we would bring into the process of having an official account, we would make sure that they follow this policy. And we're going to provide training to staff, even those that aren't going to be involved, just because it's good information to know.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. As I will finally date myself. Usually I'm dating myself in a very young way, but was at college when Facebook was only for select colleges at one of those colleges at the time. I've kind of at least grown up in that phase of that kind of social media, and it's been instructive to see how it's changed and how people use it. And I always find that anytime I start to use something, it's already incredibly out of date. So I finally know how to use Snapchat, and I don't think the kids use Snapchat anymore, and I have no idea what an Insta story is. So, but I know it's a thing, which might be more than some of my other board members. So I think it's great. I think it's a really great way to reach out to a constituency in town that I know engages more primarily on these forms of communication and can find out about. I saw our posting about the sidewalk forum, and then others being able to retweet those things and things like that. It's just reaching folks that I don't think have been reached before, and will hopefully get them to further engage in our town activities. So, and like I said, I thought it was really well put together. So, any questions or comments from the audience?
Just a couple of thoughts for the maybe the manager's office to consider, or for the board to consider. See, the Land Stewardship Committee has had a Facebook presence for about 8 or 9 years now. Now that there's a policy, we will happily adhere to it, I'm sure. So I look forward to working with the other members of the Land Stewardship Committee to make sure that they go through the official process to make sure that our little Facebook presence is listed as an official, Town of Acton web presence. We have an Acton Trails Facebook page along with our actontrails.org website. Small comment, you're going to want to harmonize the name that's mentioned in the policy is actonma.gov/social media, and the actual current name of that page looks to be something a little longer, like official social media pages or something, so you'll want to make those match up. you might want to, the schools have a vast, interesting, and apparently well-managed social media presence. So there may be some lessons there. They may have some written policies that would be helpful to look over. And the last comment was, I know that all of these social media companies have published privacy policies, but I think it would be important for us to also publish our decisions about what we're going to do with the information that people write in about. You know, are we going to be, you know, figuring out who's writing in? Are we going to be, you know, keeping track of those names? You know, there's a bunch of interesting privacy issues that I think you could address in a very straightforward kind of way that would be reassuring to people that might want to participate in social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I will note there are already some references to the fact that content posted on it is subject to Massachusetts public records law. So if you do post a comment on the Facebook page or Twitter or whatever, it is subject to the public records law. So that's good to have noted in here.
Yeah, and the policy does say that they'll be removed if they contain personal or private information. So
you're posting your social security number or something, yeah.
I think I'd just like to call attention to another item in the policy that I think relates to the comment from the audience. I think 3.7, members of the public that correspond using the town's social media sites should be made aware that such communications may be made public without further notice or consent. So that if you're using a limited public forum, such as our social media channels, to say something about trash or something that bothers you, we're putting people on notice that that information would be used to further. If there's an expectation that it would be private, we don't want that to be the expectation because it's a public channel.
Right, I think that makes sense. And hopefully we can bring on board, I know there's some existing accounts out there, I think, that have sort of grown up before there was this policy. I think it'll be good to have this in place and then have the official accounts, because I know there's the Wild Aware one that I like to follow on Instagram, where I think the Natural Resources Department occasionally posts various photos of animals they've primarily caught on the infrared cameras and stuff that they have, so it's a neat one. But we have some interesting ones like that it'll be good to have all kind of under one umbrella now. So, okay, seeing nothing else, does somebody want to make a motion related to this policy? Joan or Janet?
Move that the town manager.
I think we just need to move to approve the policy.
Oh, move to approve it. Okay.
Yeah.
Second. Move to approve it.
Okay, Joan has moved to approve the policy. Janet seconds. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. Excellent. This is here now. Okay, we're moving through this. Consent agenda. I will read these. Please say hold if there are any items you would like to hold. Number 11, permit fee waiver request, Mark Starr for Cherry Ridge Road, which I will hold. Number 12, committee appointment, David Manolin, associate member, Kelly's Corner Steering Committee, term to expire June 30th, 2022. Number 13, committee appointment, Stephanie Krantz, full member, 53 River Street Master Plan Committee, standing until completion of task. Number 14, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Congregation Beth Elohim, February 2nd, 2019. Hold, okay. Number 15, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Congregation Beth Elohim, March 16th, 2019. Number 16, hold that one, okay. Number 16, one-day alcoholic beverage license, True West, February 1st, 2019. Number 17, easement relocation agreement, New View Condominium. Number 18, meeting minutes of January 5th and 7th, 2019. Number 19, accept gift veteran services. Number 20, accept gifts, Acton Police Department. Board to accept a gift from the Ring Corporation for several Ring security devices. Number 21, request for use of 468 Main Street for the Acton Gardening Club, May 13th through 18th, 2019. Number 22, accept gift natural resources. Board to accept a gift totaling $1,336 from the George Morey Foundation to promote and develop natural resources of the town of Acton. Number 23, committee appointment, Matt Mosteller, Water Resources Advisory Committee, Acton Water District Representative, term to expire June 30th, 2022. Number 24, accept gift Recreation Department. Board to accept a gift of $500 from Ludwig Agency to support production costs for the 2019 Summer Concert Series and special events. Number 25, accept grant Recreation Department. Board to accept a grant of $500 from the Acton Boxborough Cultural Council to cover costs associated with the Chinese Music and Dance Night on June 14th, 2019. And number 26, approve letter of support for the residences at Kelly's Corner. Okay, so I held number 11. I'd like to take a separate vote on that. The request was for a waiver of all of the fees, but the building department has recommended that we only waive the fees that are essentially related to the costs of department staff time and not the archiving, electrical, plumbing, and gas fees, which total $775 because those we have to pay to third parties. So it would just be for the ones that are, essentially covered by staff time. So I would make a motion to approve the request less $775 for the fees I mentioned.
Second.
Okay, so I've moved, Joan has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and then Peter, you held 14 and 15.
Yeah, only because I didn't see any notice to the chief of police. I mean, I clearly don't have any problems with these licenses, but they're pretty large groups. One's 300, the other one's 150. I assume the police won't have any problem with it either, but usually we see their approval, and I think they should at least know about these occasions so that they might have to deal with traffic or something with that number of people. So I don't know how we deal with that, but
you could make
I didn't see anything in the file from the chief, so that's all.
Yeah, no, I saw that as well. You could make a motion to approve those two contingent on the police chief's recommendation. And then Lisa can just make sure we get that.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
So that's a motion to approve items 14 and 15 based on with the condition of the police chief's approval. Peter made that motion. Joan seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Okay, and then do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve consent agenda items 12 through 13, 16 through 26.
Second.
Janet made a motion and Joan seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Janet made a motion, Joan seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much, and we will see everybody next week.